good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Public Justice's workshop, Honoring God in Government, Answering the Call to Public Service. My name is Emily Fromke, and I'm the Program Director for Shared Justice at the Center for Public Justice, and I'll be moderating our conversation today. For those who don't know us, the Center for Public Justice is a Christian civic education and public policy organization based just outside of Washington, D.C., with a mission to equip citizens, develop leaders, and shape policy. Shared Justice is CPJ's program for Christian college students and young adults. And at the end of our time together, I'll share more with you about how you can get involved with CPJ. There are many different Christian views on political engagement, and at CPJ, we believe that our faith influences every facet of our lives, from our homes to our work, and yes, even we should let our faith influence our politics. While all of us are called to be Christian citizens and to think about what it means to love our neighbors through politics, some of us are called more specifically to be public servants, to work in government, to serve our communities in the public square, and a myriad of other jobs, and we're going to talk about those today. Many of you may even be considering a career in public service, and so at the end of our time together, I invite you to ask questions to these ladies about their work and how their faith influences it. But before we get started to hear their stories, I'd like to introduce our panelists and read their bios. So over on my right is Dr. Kenya Johns, and she is the mayor of the city of Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, where she is committed to enhancing the diverse culture of the city, growing business, and engaging new and current residents. In addition to her current role as mayor, Dr. Johns is also a licensed professional counselor, a diversity, equity, and inclusion presenter, a published author, a researcher, and a full-time faculty member at Geneva College. So she's not busy. Over to my left is State Representative Patty Kim, and she represents the 103rd District of Pennsylvania. A former journalist and a former Harrisburg City Councilwoman, she was elected to her first term in the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives in November 2012, and she still serves the residents in part of Harrisburg, the boroughs of Camp Hill, I'm going to butcher this, Wormleysburg, okay, Lemoyne, and East Pennsboro Township. Prior to her work in the legislature, Representative Kim was elected to Harrisburg City Council, where she served 2 terms. And then over on my far left is Courtney Beals, and she is a paralegal specialist at the U.S. Department of Justice in the Criminal Antitrust Division. It's a mouthful. Formerly, she served as an executive assistant to the chief program officer at the International Justice Mission. And prior to that, she was an assistant editor for Shared Justice at the Center for Public Justice. So we're excited to welcome her back to a CPJ event. With that, I have some questions for our panelists, and I'll let them talk for the majority of our time together. And you'll have to bear with us as we pass the microphone.
Yeah, we can stand up.
Would you rather? Okay, let's do that. That sounds good. Okay, well, then I will go to my first question for you guys. So I would love to hear from each of you a little bit about your journey to becoming a public servant and how you started working in government, and how your faith has informed that perspective.
Please. I know, but I prefer honestly.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for picking this seminar, and I want to thank CPJ for having us here. The way I grew up was through the lens of my mother, who was about 7 years old during the Korean War. Her house was bombed, and half of it was destroyed, and she lost her hearing. And so fast forward coming to the United States, where I was born in California, life was good. Patty, we are blessed. Like she said that to nauseam. We are blessed. We are blessed. I'm like, got it, Mom, especially as a teenager. Got it. Thankfully, my youth group sent me to missions where we went to Mexico. We went into D.C., where we were living outside of Virginia, and I saw what life is like for other people, how life was like for us, and we are blessed. We are blessed with good health, with a supportive family, and good education. Now, what are you going to do with that? And so I knew that I had to serve somehow, some way, one or the other, where it was not just you should, it was a conviction. So I thought I'm going to go into nursing school because I thought that's a great way to serve people. But I learned quickly I'm not good at chemistry. I don't like touching people. That sounds terrible, but how, how would you know how to touch strangers, until you go to clinicals and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I got kicked out of nursing school, folks. Kicked out because the professor's like, there's life after here. So I'm wasting my parents' money. I don't know what to do. A dream was to be a news reporter. So I went to communications, and I went through communication thinking, I can serve the people, be a voice for the voiceless. So I did that for 10 long years, and it was exciting. I liked to edit and write. I didn't like to be on camera because I'm naturally shy, but I did that for 10 years, and then too long of a story, but I stopped, and felt like jumping off a cliff after you're investing in something for so long. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder. He was a friend of mine on Harrisburg City Council and said, why don't you run? And they had just started videotaping and putting it on air. And it's a mess. City Council's a mess. They're fighting. Politics always has a bad name. And I'm like, I laughed at him. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But at that time, somehow, you think about like all your experiences all come together, and it just makes sense that I do that. I was on TV for 4 years. I have some name recognition. My husband loves politics. He ran for city council. I care. This is how I can serve, Patty. Politics was not one of the options I wanted, but what was awesome in God's plan is that I knew nothing about it. So what did I have to do? I had to depend on him the whole time. I wanted to throw up before, debates, going door knocking. What are they going to do to me? Spit in my face? I don't know. But I hung on to God, and I made sure that I loved his people, and I've been doing fine. I would have never, my family laughed at me that I was going to run, for politics. They know a middle child, again, introvert. This does not make any sense, but God. God was the one who left me there. And now I'm pretty much, I'm sure the mayor is too, addicted to helping people. They come to us as their last resort. I loved hearing a grandmother like, Miss, she called me, Miss Patty, I know where to go. I prayed and God told me to call you. And helping her is the easiest thing. I get one group of people to help this person, and their lives are like, whoa, changed. And it's such an awesome feeling, you guys. I may not have gotten paid much on city council, but that was my paycheck. To serve people and see that change in people, and to feel like I matter, I'm somebody, I'm value. Oh, I can talk forever, guys, but that's why how I got in, and it's going to be hard for me to leave because I enjoy it so much. Thank you.
Well, that was a beautiful story. Well, my name is Dr. Kenya Johns, and I came in kicking and screaming. I like to say that my entire journey is really God Himself. Christ is in every detail. I believe in everything that I do. But I'm not here by choice, right? I spent most of my life as in education. I've always worked in nonprofits. I've always served people. And I see myself as a public servant. And I take that title very serious, like as the mayor of the city. I don't see myself as just the mayor. I see myself as the public servant. My role is there to serve the community. And how I got into this role was I work in the community, right? As a licensed professional counselor, I'm blessed and honored to be with people at some of their most troubling times in their lives, right? When they're at their most broken, and the times when Jesus says we really should be there for one another, right? And when you're seeing this, you're privileged to see, wow, there's so much that's going on beyond their control. But if these things were fixed and changed, how much that can transform their lives, right? The systems that we have in our society are so broken that it doesn't matter how much I work with this person. There's going to be only so far that they can get in this space. But if we can change these systems around them, we can really begin to make long-term sustainable change in their mental health, their physical health, their locations. And then if that changes, then their community changes. And then it's a whole cyclical thing. So ideally, I did not really want to be in politics. I really wanted to be a servant of God and work alongside of those that were in that space, right? I didn't feel like that's where I was called to be. I wanted to be in education. That's where I spent 8 million years crying to get a degree, a doctorate degree in. And I'm like, this is where God's going to put me. And I didn't cry all these tears for nothing, right? Tell God your plans and He's going to laugh at you. So because I cried all those tears, and now I'm the mayor of the city of Beaver Falls. But I say all that to say that in this space, my journey, was riddled. And at the time, whenever it was time to run for election, I've never experienced grief, but I had gone through grief in abundance really quickly. My mother had passed away the day after Christmas. My sister had passed away the day after Thanksgiving. It was just so much grief. And I was just like, there's no way that God's going to put me in this space of politics, which I'm not a politician. I'm just about serving people, justice work, making sure that we're serving all people, because all people are Christ's people. And I'm like, this isn't going to happen. I did though. I was surrounded with support. The community cheered me on. They encouraged me, and in fact, they were the driving force to help me unseat a 12-year incumbent. And I don't say that like, wow, I won or whatever, right? I say that to show the testimony of what God can do. That if it's something that God has put on your heart to do, no matter how big the challenge is, how big the barrier is, it doesn't matter how big Goliath is, God will give you the 3 stones and you can overcome anything. So, thank you.
All right, thank you guys for being here. So my journey into becoming a public servant, I actually grew up in a family of public servants. So my grandfather was mayor, my dad served on school board, and then both of my grandmothers and my mother were public educators. So I think from a really early age, I just grew up thinking of public service as like a really noble and rewarding field. I also grew up going to a Methodist church that placed a pretty heavy emphasis on public service and social justice. So I think that nudged me in the right way. So I went to college. I studied public policy and social and economic justice, and then moved to DC shortly after, which I think Emily mentioned. I worked for 2 Christian nonprofits before starting at the Department of Justice. I worked first for Center for Public Justice, and then IJM. So this is actually working at the Department of Justice. This is my first role as a public servant, and I started in September, so I feel very out of my league next to these 2 women. But as far as my perspective, how my faith shapes my perspective about public service, I don't really think there's like one right way, or that there's like a prescriptive methodology to being a Christian in public service. I was thinking about it and I was like, I feel like our obligations really vary with like the time and the place and the culture and the circumstance. But I think like for me at least, one universal like guiding principle is that I think God as public servants really wants us to serve for the common good. And I know there was this like strain of evangelical thinking for a really long time that Christians should remove themselves from the public sphere because of this temptation to power and corruption and greed. And while I do think we have to be wary of those things, I don't think that's right. I think we should be involved, and we should be involved for the common good. And as far as common good, I think this thought about, retreating from the public has caused Christians to gather in like Christian only enclaves kind of. And I think in order to do the common good and to serve people, all people, that means getting out of our Christian enclaves, means interacting with everyone who is the public of the United States. So thank you.
Thank you guys for your responses. We did not practice this earlier, so I'm learning all sorts of new things from you as I'm sitting here. This is great. My next question is for you, Representative Kim. And as a state representative, you represent a wide variety of people, and your district in particular is quite diverse. And so, considering that the word represent is in your job title, how does your faith impact the way that you think of your job of representation?
So I would not say this back then, but I am so glad that I saw my parents made fun of because of their accent. I'm so grateful that I was the kid who couldn't find a seat at the cafeteria table. I was so glad that even though I was the top, what do you call it? I played lacrosse I did most of the goals, I don't know what you call it. But when the new coach came in, they laughed at me like, yeah, you're the top player. Just being underestimated, being mistreated, being overlooked is something that I now have empathy for other people. And so when I have marginalized communities in my district, I know that they need to be invited to be mainstream, get them off the sideline and bring them at the table. When the Jewish community, when they were attacked with anti-Semitic, stupid graffiti on their temples, I ran towards the pain. When we had Black Lives Matter and we had those marches, I ran towards the pain. Seeing the Muslims get, attacked verbally, I ran towards them. And I'm so grateful that I've had those experiences where I felt like an underdog is helping the underdog get to the Capitol where I get to work. I know that this job is incredibly special and that also God can use anyone. So going in, is like, don't screw up, Patty. So do love on people as much as you can. Treat everybody like gold. Whoever comes into your office and try to deliver something, keep your nose clean. I put all my expenses online, just overdoing it to be in good standing, because I know that God can take away this really awesome opportunity that I don't want to lose. I can really do a lot of good things in this position. So looking at my district as a family and making sure that everybody's okay and doing well has been just the way I have been doing things for the last 10 years. And people notice, the thing that people talk about is that Patty cares. It's not Representative Patty Kim, it's like Aunt Patty. So they come with a lot of issues that probably aren't state related, but that's okay, because a lot of people are lacking social capital. People want me to be their reference letter for jobs because I'm the only maybe important person they know. Without lying, I will do as much as I can to support them. We just got to keep raising people up, encouraging them, letting know that they're valued. And I think without me having to explain the gospel, hopefully they can see God in me. Thank you.
Thank you. So my next question is for Dr. Johns, and I would like to know, so you wear many different hats besides being a mayor, as a counselor and as a presenter and a consultant, and so I'm curious how those other roles have influenced your role as a public servant and vice versa, if you could speak to that as well.
We were talking earlier today that God really doesn't make mistakes whenever He puts you in places, right? So you're doing something, you're in a place, or you have an opportunity. Those aren't by accident, right? It's not by fate or by chance. Those are designed messages and opportunities for you that you might not understand why at the moment, right? I might not understand why I met this person or why I was in this space at this time, but 5 years from now or 10 years from now, all the pieces start to come together. And I think one of the biggest things of why I wear so many hats is that when you're in a mayor of a third-class city, which is different than a township or a borough, and you're learning something new by yourself, and you're trying to go head first in, you have to learn how to wear a lot of hats. And if you're not used to wearing a lot of hats, if you're not used to having a lot of long days, being really tired and exhausted and still showing up, you can be burned out really quickly, right? And that good work and that great intention that you had to do that work can fizzle away very quickly, right? But all of those long days, all of those things, and all these hats that I wear were designed to prepare me for this time in this space to where God is using that to better my community, right? It's using those skills I have to be able to talk about the mental health aspects we're having or the negative impact that blight is decayed buildings, negative spaces, right? And not just what it does to the eyesight, right? What it does to the mental health and the physical health of a space, right? But if I didn't know that, how can I inform the people that can help provide resources to address that? I couldn't. How do I have the empathy to talk to people about things when they're bringing things to me that I wasn't there for if I wasn't the counselor in these spaces to learn these things? How do I wear the hat of the different diverse needs of my community? Because I'm very blessed to have a diverse community but segregated for a lot of it, right? How do I have the skills to bring us together like we're supposed to do as Christians if I don't have those skills already built up? So although my skill sets seem very different, they were designed and placed in the perfect timing for God for me to be able to be in this moment in time for the perfect storm for our city. So I really just say it's the grace, it's God, and it's a great support system, right? Learning how to manage and juggle those things and becoming confident and being able to start saying no and being able to prioritize those things as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So, Courtney, switching gears to thinking about the role of public service on the federal level. When it comes to thinking about public servants there, most people have some awareness of their representatives or senators, but they might not know much about what it looks like to be a civil servant. So I was hoping that you would speak a little bit to what that experience is like, and how this role has changed or expanded the way that you view public service.
Okay, so I would say that I think my current role has really changed the way I think about public service in that I had a very narrow-minded view of what public service was before entering the bureaucracy. I think, as Emily said, I really just thought about publicly elected officials. But coming to the Department of Justice, I think I've just realized how many ways there are to be a public servant. I work within the criminal antitrust division at DOJ, and within DOJ, there's a couple other divisions. There's like tribal justice, environmental justice, there's tax, there's fraud, all these different things. And then if you go even wider than that and look at the other executive branches, we've got like Department of State, Department of Defense, the FDA, the EPA. And within each of those bodies and branches, there are a ton of roles. So, I would even consider the IT guy who helps me with my tech issues at the DOJ like a public servant. So I would just say if you are thinking about public service and you have a wide variety of interests, there probably is a place for you. Yeah, that's what I say. Thanks.
Thanks, Courtney. So I know that some of y'all came to this session today because you might be thinking about public service yourself someday. And so now I'd like to ask all three of our panelists just to speak a little bit about what advice you might have for a college student who is considering a career in public service, and how you would advise them to go about that.
I think shadowing in the beginning is really important just to make sure this is something that you want to do. Pick somebody who you kind of align in values and to shadow them either at work or during a campaign. There's a lot of humbling things as a as an elected official or a candidate especially when you have to door knock and basically either asking for their signature for your petition or ask them to vote, and you're bothering them. Do not ever door knock during a Steelers or Eagles game because they get so angry at you and door slams. It only happened to me once, but I learned very quickly. When there's a game, leave the doors alone. So there's humbling aspects, just to make sure this is something you want to do. So shouting is always helpful. But, I always hear the word passion. Is it your passion? Is it your passion? And, I think service or wanting to help people is a passion. But there's you have to wade through sewage before you can swim through clear waters, is my take on things. There's a lot of things that I can't stand asking for money on the phone, But if I think about the conviction and this is what I can do to get there, I will do it. But there's a lot of stuff I don't like about this job. But when I get the paycheck of helping and serving somebody, that's what keeps me going. So passion does not mean that you like all aspects of the job, because that is completely untrue. You're just able to endure it because you know that there's a goal in mind. So shadow, internship, all that good stuff before you make that jump.
My advice is actually pretty similar to Patty's. I would say take any and all opportunity you get to work with public servants, and even if that's like the person picking up the trash or, you know, doing that job that no one wants to do, just getting that exposure is really key and vital. And I would also say just doing a lot of like listening and learning. I think some of the most valuable conversations and experiences I've had is when I've like reached out to someone, kind of similar to like shadowing. Um, and you'd be surprised, like, you know, a lot of people I think have helped me to where I am today. And you know, there's more people who I'm sure will help me in the future. And, you know, people really do want to pay that back. So if you want to, if you're interested in talking to someone, you admire their career, admire what they're doing, reach out to them and ask them to get coffee. 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. So take opportunities when you get them, and yeah, make friends with people and talk to people about what they do.
So mine is similar and a lot of different. So the first thing I want to tell you is that you're enough, right? You're young, so you're like, people are telling you, oh, you're too young to do that, or you can't do that. Wait your turn, or there's no such thing as your turn. Because if you're always living your life waiting, your time's never going to come. Sometimes you have to forge ahead, right? Do it with discernment, though, right? Do it with grace and guidance. But just know you're going to get naysayers along the way. Naysayers don't mean that you stop, right? The devil is busy in those attitudes in those times. So know that you are enough. You are perfectly made, and that if this is what you're called to do, no matter what the season and time, no matter if you don't feel the most supported, if this is your space and time, it is your space and time, and it'll be okay. Even if in that opportunity, that first time you go, you fail, don't give up. There's opportunity outside of that to keep going, right? So just know that. And then also, I want you guys to be okay to know that it's all right to veer from what you've learned your whole life. I know this is a conversation about politics, and we grew up in households that maybe thought this way or that way. We don't have to do that anymore. And I'm telling you now that you can be the generation that changes. Hey, we thought this way. We're going to do exactly what mom and dad did because grandma and grandpa did that, or this and that. You don't have to. It is okay to make decisions for yourself that best represents yourself in the future that you want this country to look like. And I actively recommend that you do. Because the reality of it is, not only are you the next generation to lead us, you're the current generation that should be leading us. Make this country better, but we need you to be strong in your convictions, understand and trust in God to lead you, but we need you also to be ready to carry your torch. So.
Thank you all for answering my questions. But now at this point, I wanted to open it up to the rest of y'all in this room to ask your questions. So if you would raise your hand, I'll call on you, and I would love it if you would say your name and where you're coming from before you ask your question. So this gentleman in the back, I saw you raise your hand first. So
what used to be Beaver College in Beaver, Beaver area, west part of in the Philadelphia area. A research librarian, academic librarian. So one of the things, thank you so much for your presence here. It's really extremely powerful. I appreciate very much all of what you shared. I think one of the things that comes to mind as I look at all of you is I think about the ways that women are often the people who really do community, help to bring a sense of community well, in ways that men don't necessarily. And of course, we know that historically we've seen so many men in politics. I wonder how your experiences as public servants in the roles that you are have helped you to think about the ways, the kind of gender-based, the historical, the tendencies that people have as male or female public servants in the spaces where you've operated.
thank you for the question. Who wants to take that?
Mr. Wong, I do really appreciate that question, and that has always been a challenge for me going into the House of Representatives where there are 203 of us. We didn't have Right now, we have about 30% women, but when I got in, it was about 12%. And I first got in, I was on the house floor. Our house, I don't know if you guys have been to the Capitol of Harrisburg, but it looks like a museum. It's just ornate and it's beautiful. I walk in, and I'm also the first Asian American to ever serve in the General Assembly. And thank you. The speaker's like, "Hi, thanks for visiting." Like, you know how hard it took me to get here? I'm not visiting, but thank you, Mr. Speaker. And then knowing that the women in the legislature, we and all of us tend to have to work extra hard. We're underestimated a lot of the times. A lot of times the men didn't know what to do with us. I counted 26 times in that one day on session, they just said, "Really nice dress, Patty." That's nice, right? But what about the bills I'm working on? What about what's my priorities? Really nice dress, Patty. So, you could feel it. And then I put a lot of pressure on myself that I have to, whenever I speak, it has to be really smart and like on point, and prove myself all the time. Being the workhorse where the guys sometimes are just like, hey, it's all about networking for them. And so I had this inner struggle to act like I belong here, Patty. Like I would come to the side and sit at the side, and there's places for all of us to sit at the stage, but I come in here like I don't belong here, and it took me a while to be like, I got elected just like you all. I'm here, I belong here, and I have constituents that I have to. So there was a lot of like self-talk to be here and be present and lead, and not feel like I was below everyone else. And also with my Asian culture, I have to respect my elders. And so when I had older people, I used to call them Mr. in my 30s. I'm like, Mr. Allen, it's Todd. Just call him Todd, Patty. So the cultural thing, the feminine thing, it was a lot going on in my head. But as my last point is, while we have more women in the legislature, I've seen the difference, whether it be the decorum, the level of empathy, and the way we just operate has been so refreshing versus it felt like a frat house when I first came in. So women are very essential in leadership, and bless you.
Take another question. Student in the back over there. Oh, he had his hand up first? Oh. Okay.
I'm Dan. I'm from the University of Richmond. My primary question is those who are talking about how the faith influences the work in government. How do you reconcile that while also honoring the importance of the separation of church and state that exists within our country?
Great. Yeah.
I think Representative Kim hit that on very clearly, right? And they talk about that too in the Bible. I don't have to shout from the rooftops that I'm Christian, right? You should know that I'm Christian because there should be something about me that moves in a space. When I'm in a space that there's non-Christians, you should see something in me that feels different, that looks different. There's something that you can't just put your hands on. And it should be love, and it should be grace, and it should be all the things that Jesus died for us to give to one another. And that's how we separate, in my opinion, those things. I don't have to tell everyone, hey, I'm Christian. Hey, I'm your mayor, I'm Christian, right? But they should know because I'm showing them all Christ's love, the way that Christ shows us love every day. I'm giving them that extra empathy whenever I don't really have it, right? I'm listening to them a little more when it's like a situation where I'm listening to you, but I can't really do anything for you, but be here for you in this moment. And I think that if we get past this notion that everything I do, I have to say that I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm independent, or I'm a Christian, or I'm an atheist, or I'm this, or I'm that, we really can start to just be those things and not pretend that we are. We can just be Christians and not need to tell everyone we're Christians because they'll just know by the work that we're doing and who we are. Does that answer your question?
Just something I was going to add real quick to answer your question. I I think that we can be Christians and have that motivate our life and our actions and our thoughts while like keeping not like a boundary, I would say, I guess, but while not forcing our religion down someone else's throat, for example. So like I feel like, I worked at 2 Christian nonprofits prior to coming to DOJ. This is my first job working with a lot of different people from a lot of different faith backgrounds. But, infringing on someone else's religious beliefs, particularly like in a work setting. So hope that's helpful.
Hi, I'm Steve Benson. I teach and work at Laroche University here in Pittsburgh. Um, First of all, Orem's Donuts, am I right?
Come on, the state already knows. That's a statewide thing.
But I want to ask, particularly those of you who are elected, you mentioned especially serving the people in need and in pain, and the places being vandalized or mistreated. Right? My question is, as an elected official, right, you're elected to represent everyone, right? Even the people doing the spray painting and the vandalizing, even the people that hate you because of who you are or the policies you represent. So I ask this because I imagine it's hard, right? It would be hard to think. How do you represent those people well? And what do you personally do?
You want me to go first? Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a great question, right? And for me, it's actually pretty simple. I think about it like as a clinician. I'm going to come into a space with someone that I'm not going to agree with and I'm not going to see eye to eye. But the reality of it is, and as people, we all have one common thing that we all want. We all want to be happy. We all want a life that is full of happiness and prosperity. Even us that are the most miserable, downtrodden things, those are acts that we have commonalities that we want peace, right? And as a Christian, and especially as someone that considers himself Christian, because I think you can be Christian and consider yourself a Christian. I don't think they're the same thing. And I think you move with them the same way. I don't have to agree with you to still hear what you say and consider what you say in my decision making, right? Because if you're making a good point, you're making a good point. I still have a responsibility to hear what you're saying, to take that into my decision making abilities, and make sure that when we're making decisions, that it's representing a collective of everybody. Because when we look at it from a diversity, equity, inclusion perspective, a lot of time policies are written for majority culture, right? So we're going to do this because it's going to serve the most amount of people. But what does that do? There's always the same group of people that continue to be marginalized, forgotten, and left behind. So if we're always only writing policies and creating opportunities for the most people, we're always going to leave the same people behind. So they're always going to be not at the table and not going to have the opportunities. So instead of creating a space where we're always, let's just focus on the most people we can, let's create policies that are helping everyone. We're all going to lose something, right? But what are we willing to lose in this space? What is our ultimate goal so that we all can win? So that's my perspective.
Steve, that's something I've been struggling, even been doing this for 17 years. The comments that I get on social media, the pings, they still hurt. I mean, I'm not thick skinned and it doesn't bother me anymore. It's every comment that you guys send, I read. And at this point, I don't even read comments. It's like, well, yeah, right? Why do you want to walk in the door and get kicked in the teeth? So I don't do that anymore. I've also loved watching people, and from a Christian perspective, I think that there's a lot of people who have a void in their lives, and they fill that void with politics and government, and that government instead of God, you are the problem, this and this. I mean, we have a lot to do better. We should be held accountable, but I think that a lot of people use politics to air their grievances, and they think they feel better, but they don't. And we are not the answer, obviously, to all the problems of this world. So sometimes we just have to get our house in order before we go out, because a lot of times when it's messy inside, it spills out into the public space. So I see it as a God thing that this person has a void and they're reaching for the wrong thing. And I'm not going to take it personally, but I think they need something more soulful instead of government.
You got that right. helpful and show accountable. Hey, who are you?
When there was a particular president back in 2020, there were a lot of people who were upset, and they said, I'm not going to run for president. I'll just run for Congress. And we're like, oh, like there are steps to to getting to Congress. Congress is a really big district, and if you want to make mistakes, do it at the local level before you move up to the top. So it's very that you're spot on. People think, I can't be president, but let me, be U.S. senator. And there's a lot of things that you can do before you reach that goal. I think that's a great goal. But at the local level, man, we have done so many good things, some bad things, from medical marijuana. I mean, there's so many things that happen at the local level that you can be participatory. Thank you.
My bad. I also just want you to know that the immediate things that are happening in your community, the work that they do at the state level and the federal level are great. But you know how long it takes for their stuff to get done? Forever sometimes. Sorry, and you know what I'm saying. To go from the Congress, House, and Senate, that takes forever. The things that you want done in your community, like you want your roads paved, you want street lights, you want better policing, you want better communication with your fire department, that doesn't happen there. The stuff you need in your communities happens at the local levels. You want to know what's going on with the dollars that are going to your taxes. That happens at your local level. You want to know why the same person has been sitting in that seat for 35 years, yet your community continues to decay. That's your local level. They come in to assist the local level to do the day-to-day work. If you care about the day-to-day things that happen in your community, you have to start there. But this local level only works if the people in our great life representing Kim, and everyone's not, are there to help support the work that's happening here as well, though. But it has to be a partnership.
So one thing that's really helped me, I'm a registered Democrat, and my father is a conservative Republican, and he has been my best example of how to accept one another. He is so supportive. He's so proud of me. He's 86 right now, but I'll be like, Dad, I'm gonna go to the rally for Hillary Clinton. I'm gonna be a warm-up speaker, and he's like, Great, Patty, great. I'm so happy for you. I know he does not like Hillary Clinton, but he he doesn't tolerate. He's with me on it. And so if he can do that, and politics is my love for him is so much more important than politics. So anyways, I have a great example at home. And when I do interact with people who have different views, um, listening always helps, and then obviously finding the common ground. But every single morning, I have to do my quiet time and just pray for wisdom. And I need to have a reserve so that I'm not triggered, because I don't agree with you, bam, bite your head off. I'm not doing that. I also recommend this app. I don't know if you guys know it, Lectio 365. They're short 8-minute kind of meditative sermons, reflection, prayer. It is so awesome just to center me before I go out into that messy world. And so it's very intentional to go out there to act like a Christian. It doesn't come naturally. I have to write it in. I have to make sure that I have rest and I have that margin so I'm not being reactive but more thoughtful in my interactions. But thank you for that question.
You guys run out of questions? No more questions? One more? Okay. Yeah, go for it.
That was the best day of your life.
Pretty good, right? So I was just wondering for all three, if you could name a political or legal or personal challenge that you faced after you entered your profession, where in order to solve it or in order to figure out your stance on it, you had to turn to religion or faith as well.
Can you repeat the question again? So I make sure I answer it
If
clearly.
there is a political or a legal or any sort of personal challenge you faced once you got into your current profession, where in order to solve it, you had to turn to your faith as well, or at least in order to have your stance with it.
So, we know what's happening in the world when it comes to policing, right? As a mayor, that's one of my main priorities and duties to work directly with my chief. And I'm very thankful, and not just thankful, I'm very blessed to have a chief that's open to conversation and dialogue about the things that's happening, and then also open to dialogue and conversation about making sure what's not going to happen in our community, right? Both those things have to happen. But being an African American woman, uh, being a social justice advocate, being a person that sees the trauma of people being murdered on TV over and over again is traumatic, right? It's hard. I don't go on social media. I don't read the comments, right? Because it's traumatic. It's a trauma. And as a counselor, I know what that does to us. I know what it does to my central nervous system to constantly see people be murdered or killed. I understand. So, but it's a hard space to be in this seat, right? To have all these feelings and emotions and not know exactly how to go about doing that. Because I know that we have great officers, right? I know that we have great staff, but I also know that there's things that we still have to work on. So for me, I had to turn to God to know, God, how do I take all my feelings and emotions in this space? How do I take all of this trauma that I'm experiencing, feeling right now, and put it into this role as mayor to make sure that I'm honoring all of the sacrifice that these officers are putting in every day for the betterment of every one of us in this city, because they are. It is a sacrifice and it is a scary job to have to not know if you're coming home every day. That's real. But also knowing that there's officers out there that don't uphold what they're called to uphold. How do I do that with grace and love and mercy, while also knowing what the reality is for people that look like me? So that was a really tough challenge coming in. And there was a lot of fear from them as well, that I was going to come in and just fire everybody. That's not what we did at all. And I'm glad that we did. You know, in fact, we were able to have good conversations, have real conversations. And like I said, blessed with an amazing chief to see justice as a forefront in all the work that happens in our city and in our community. And then also, you know, to push that needle forward. We never had female officers in our city, ever. My city's been around since 1800s. We've never had a female police officer. We hired 2 female police officers since then. So just know that, and part of answer your question too, just know that stay strong in your convictions. Know what guides you that's gonna let you go to sleep at night. Don't be willing to bend on things that are gonna cause you strife and chaos or cause you to fight and wrestle with your thoughts with God. Just know that, but also have a heart of learning and expanding of what you've experienced in your thoughts, because you might be wrong too. So I hope that answered both of your questions. All right, thank you.
I have one I can contribute as well. Hopefully, this is a little bit relatable to people, but I struggle with imposter syndrome really bad. I even have imposter syndrome about being on this panel. But I will say that in a way that how my faith, I think, helps me through this is like when I fail at a project or, I get shut down at a meeting or, I feel intimidated because I'm the only woman in the room or whatever it may be. I think it's always good to return to the fact that, our identities are not found in our jobs or in our relationships or, in our status or whatnot. Like our core identity is Christ, and trying to like it's not easy, and sometimes I do it, and I'm like, it's not hitting like God. But just to remind yourself that this is not where your identity is rooted, and part of being human is failing, and so it might happen a lot, and it's okay. And yeah, it's not our ultimate salvation. So.
So I can't think of a particular like bill that I had to try to figure out and run to God for the answer. I think God gave us a brain that we can use on our own. But the thing that I have to hang on to God is just I want to respond. The way I want to respond is probably not very Christian. And so there's a lot of self-control and discipline that I need to lean on God. And then also when I have to do hard things like show up to a debate where my opponent is nasty, I have a commitment to God that this is where I'm supposed to be. So I just show up to my enemies, show up, show up, show up. In the end, people respect me for showing up, but I also have to lean hard on God to give me that courage. Nobody wants to be confronted all the time, but my folks like to let me know how well or not well I'm doing, and it's no fun. But you just have to show up every day and let them know that I'm here for you. Um, and that I know I can do better, and just have that humility when in this position, ego is like big and they talk about themselves, and you can tell the slick politicians from afar. But I hope that makes us different, where we actually listen to people and feel like we show that we care, makes us different and set apart. And yeah, that's my answer.
Time for, I think, one or two more questions. So let's see. I'm going to go to someone who hasn't asked a question yet.
I love folding laundry because I get to put it in and everything comes out in the end. And I put it in the drawers and I'm kidding. But you're exactly right. Like, how do I fix poverty? How do I fix the criminal justice system? It is so difficult. And so and because my party was in the minority and I've been in the minority for 10 years, that we basically haven't been able to get anything done. So my new mantra is something is better than nothing, Sam. So the baby steps is where I try to celebrate and pushes me forward. Plus, my constituents are so gracious and will always tell, you're doing a good job, Patty. Da, da, da. So that helps me. And then the baby steps is I find victory in the baby steps. But great question, Sam. That is so true.
And Sam, also part of something that happens when people like work for like the representatives or in offices and things like that, you guys don't really connect to the community. Like you stay in your offices, you stay in the cubicle, or you just go to the events, you print out the things that you got to do, or you make the nice websites. You don't connect and network like you're supposed to in these roles. So connect, network. If you're helping someone and you passed a grant or you wrote something for the representative or the senator or whoever you're working with, talk to the person you're writing it for, engage with them. Hey, let me know how this goes. What do you use it for? If you're having an event for this, invite me. Like that's how you kind of know the victories, but you got to be willing to show up.
That's about all we have time for, but I just want to thank y'all for coming today and listening to this talk and for your thoughtful questions. And I hope that this will be the beginning of you thinking about faith and politics and public service, and how all of those things can intersect. So if you have the chance, stop by CPJ's table in the exhibit hall. We're pretty close to the doors on the left side. We'd love to talk more about you. We have paid internships just outside of DC, and would love to hear what you're interested in and talk more about our student programming with all of that. So come say hi afterwards. But that's the end of the official programming.